Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel, RPG with DBJ. Of course, I am your host, DBJ, and surrounded by the best and the brightest out there in the tabletop RPG community. Now, before we get started into this, you guys know that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier has began its run. It is the second Marvel iterative series on Disney Plus. It is very popular. And I thought we'd talk about it. There's one little aspect here on this Monster Monday that I thought we would talk about that really intrigued me. I hadn't really thought about talking about this until the series was over, but I figured there's no way for myself or any of us to spoil the show since only the first episode of 6, I believe, aired. So I thought we would talk about it this week. There are uh, subject some subject matter that has been brought up by old and new individuals that have found the show. One of those subjects I thought would be a really cool subject to talk about for a week's time. So maybe we'll do that next week about the classic save or die insta use abilities, especially by some of your antagonists and even protagonists, the characters themselves. You know what I'm talking about in games where it's like I have the ability to never be surprised, or you must make a saving throw or you'll instantly die from this monster's power and things like that. And do they still have a place in tabletop role playing games? And I thought that could be a huge subject to talk about. And lastly, you will see on my on two which would be viewable on the left side of the screen, it's off to my right, that there is an image, of course, of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And below that is something called Level Up. Now, for those of you who do not know, other than seeing me as a talking head, that I am a content creator. I create this content here on YouTube, Twitch. You can join our Discord server. The audio gets punched out there as well. And I'm also a writer. I write for Critical Hit Publishing. That's where my home is. That's where the cinematic environs, 9 books deep so far, are produced over there with Drive Through RPG. You can find all that information below the video as well. But Level Up, uh, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is a project that I've been hired to work with far too many others. It is being produced by N-World. If you are not familiar with N-World, N-World is a legacy location that's got the something known as the Insider and N-World magazine and so on. And I believe they've produced something like over 20 successful Kickstarters for various content. And this one is a huge project to create the advanced version of 5th edition somewhere and it's completely compatible with 5th edition. And so much like how Pathfinder tried to separate itself from Dungeons and Dragons back during the 3.xx era, this is the same thing. And so it's starting to come to fruition. And I'll give you more information on that as we go on. Of course, it's not finished. It's got a ton of playtest materials open to the public and lots of surveys put out there by the people who have looked at some of the playtest materials and decided what they want. So we'll talk about that later on. Okay, now that that's out the way, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Dead Man. Gaster. Oh, okay. By the way, let me reiterate that the show is live, and it goes live 6 a.m. My time, Eastern Standard Time, or EDT, or what have you. And you can, of course, participate live. So let's get into the chat over on Twitch. Gaster Two Souls says, "Yep, I've seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I even might have an interesting gameplay mechanic based off of it. Something that had happened within the show, and it will dive into things such as post-traumatic stress disorder." That is a great thing that really sparked something in me about the very first episode. As most first episodes of television shows, you really need to set up the premise of the show and the characters. Now, we do have an idea of who the Falcon is, Sam Wilson, and the Winter Soldier, Bucky, Bartholomew Buchanan. And these characters, we've seen them on the big screen portraying themselves. And for the most part, they have always been intrinsically linked with Captain America, Steve Rogers, where it's very little Falcon's personal life, but a lot of Falcon with the wings and running around and supporting his fellow soldiers. And in the show, subtle or not, they really have delved into this idea of them being soldiers and ex-soldiers in this fight to basically help out humanity. And what happens when a soldier goes back home? What what thanks do soldiers get? What things do they think about over and over again when the fight is over, but they're back at home? And so that's pretty important. But there's one thing, since this is Monster Monday, and we have all week to talk about this. There's an interesting group out there, as these two guys are, I don't want to say they're mundane. I want to say that they are going to be pulled into a plot that involves far more worldly events. In comic books, we always have like in WandaVision, we had magic and AI systems and warping of reality and illusions. But this is far more where we deal with, gun violence and I want to say cults and propaganda and such. And what an interesting villain that hopefully this will be a great development in where there's a villain group known as the Flag Smashers. And the Flag Smashers wearing, at least initially, wearing these black masks with this red handprint over their faces, over the mask. And they want a world without borders. They prefer, thank you there, Deadman, for putting into the Discord N-World is run by Russ Morrissey, also known as Morris, and we'll get into that later on. I don't want to self promote too much, although it's not really much self promotion on me when you've got 20 something people helping to build this this particular thing. But this the idea that after the snap, the decimation, or rather in the Marvel Cinematic Universe known as the blip, the dusting, whatever you want to call it, that I love the fact that they're still continuing people's lives after it happened. I mean, there was a comedic return in the Spider-Man Far From Home movie, and then we got into WandaVision, and there was chaos from people brought back from the snap, and now in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we see the extended issues when people came back. And I like this idea that they came up with, that the Flag Smashers want to return to a world where half the population was gone, where people had to work together to keep society moving, where there was and in reality, we know that this is a truism, that there is unity in struggle. There is a pride given when you have very little, but you give just a little bit, what little bit you have, to someone else to help them rise up out of their condition. We know, as displayed in a real fact, that strangely enough, the less you have, the more those people give. Homeless people tend to give of themselves and what little they have to others far more often than those of us, myself. I'll use myself as an example, than giving of what I have. And that's not to say that I'm a nice person. That's just a simple fact. And I like the fact that there is this villain group that you can kind of scratch your head and go, you know what? I'm sure I'm not going to like their methods, but the idea that there are people out there who prefer that half the population was gone, that there were more resources and more space and more opportunity to express emotional and physical and social uh, willpower, that they prefer that than have the world crowded again with all the backbiting and these new people coming in that have been gone for 5 years who don't know what life was like when everybody was gone, and they're just reaching their hands out because they want to return to their old lives and not respecting the trauma and the struggle that the people came before them. I like that. Gaster Two Soul says, uh, the mechanic is known as F&F, which is short for fight and flight. And it's where, when a human is dropping drastically low on health, they will suddenly gain a major temporary boost on a few of their stats, such as perception, strength, endurance, dex, and even a tiny amount of health boost in trade for sanity. Ooh, I like that. I like things like mechanics like that that put the onus on the player character to do the thing. Like, hey, you can get this one thing if you give up this other thing, and as the more levers you can put in a game that allow the players to do that, I like that kind of stuff. I really do. In a way, Dungeons and Dragons does work that way, which is why hit points don't reduce the effectiveness of the character. It's I look at it cinematically like a character with 50 hit points that gets knocked down to 27 and then 13 and then 6 hit points and is not losing any strength is equally becoming stronger and faster and more effective as they quote unquote lose their capabilities. And we just don't measure the losses. We're just saying that they are just remaining that much more tougher. They have much more grit with them. Gaster Two Souls goes on to say, "Oh, and don't forget about a U.S. agent who might fall on the other side, where instead of terrorism, we get something more like nationalism. Nationalism. But honestly, knowing Disney, they might just dodge that idea and go a different route. I don't know. I don't know. They skirted the line. I think Feige and the team over there won't go too deep, but they kind of skirted the line of in this episode. I think that we all saw, like, listen, U.S. Agent's face is very punchable, right? He's got that smarmy, face perfect for like a just asshole smile, right? And they did that on purpose. The ever so slightly non-fitting Captain America face mask helmet looking thing just perfect. And listen, the costume design, the actor, the image that they put out, bravo, whoever thought, like, they were like, no, it fits too perfect. Nope, that doesn't fit quite right. No, right somewhere right in the middle. Gasper's like, he looked like a Darren. Yeah, very punchable. Yeah, Obin's like, U.S. agent will always be a jerk to me, though. Oh yes, and I think the show's going to skirt the idea. I think they're going to dip their fingers in their toes into the very cold waters of this, because even in this first episode, we see slight images of, like, hints of maybe racism. There's little slight images of the hints of, more so with Falcon is a friggin' he he's let's just say that out of any other superheroes, if you really think about it, you go back in time, like, Falcon has been in the fight since day one, right? Sure, maybe he hasn't been around as long as some of the other heroes, but man, he's been in the fight for a long time. Ever since jogging in Washington, D.C., and Steve Rogers is like on your left, and Sam Wilson's like, yeah, I get it, with, you know, I don't know, Captain America pacing him like 5 laps to everyone he had. He's been like down for the fight. He's been like, yeah, Cap, whatever. And Cap's like, I don't want you to be in bars. He's like, whatever, shut up, man, dude, I'm down. And when they were against the Sokovia Accords, going over to what oh the incident in Africa, the getting arrested and being put on the barge and all that. I mean, all those things have happened, and he's been in it. So when he goes to the bank and is like, "Can I get a loan?" and the bank's like, bank manager's like, "Yeah, we can't really give out a loan to you people." I was just like, "Ow, ooh." Now, mind you, you could tell in the show when the sister was like, "You people," and he's like, "No, no, no, like, you undusted people, like you're half the population that came back. You're trying to get back to your normal lives, and we've had 5 years of financial institutions where." We were handing out money to all the people that were left to try to survive, but now that the population has literally doubled in every sense of the word, we can't hand out loans to people that have no work history. And I was like, no work history after 5 years. You guys are, and I love it. I absolutely love this idea. And I think the reason why I love the idea is because I put in the title legacy villain agendas, because oftentimes we'll see something where let's take your classic. Sorry, something's making my face itch. We'll take something like a dragon or a lich, an evil empire, a wizard, a giant monster. Or there's some bad guy we have, and the heroes go and they beat ass, right? And they, we're fold arms, chest puffed out, hands on hips. We're the hero. We've defeated the bad guy. And then when the dust settles, like, would there be people who are thinking like, yeah, the bad guy is gone, but who takes over after that? The heroes came in and beat ass, thank you very much. And sure, the giant ancient blue dragon that dominated our sub-Saharan, community in the Oasis was terrible. But now that the dragon's gone, we've got like 16 different warlords. We don't know who's getting fed. Sure, the dragon was eating our loved ones, but at least it was like, the 15th of the month every month, right? Like, no, man, there's something in the air. I have no idea what's with the itching. My eyes are watering and stuff. It's probably allergy season. It's the allergy season. Allergy season. A whoop de doo. Achoo. Achoo. Is that better? Anyway, Gaster Two Soul says, as for when sanity comes in, this is where we begin to show traits such as PTSD or minor signs of anxiety and trauma, where we might get temporary debuffs on certain things such as wisdom, a distortion of perception, and even having altered dialogue options to make a person feel disoriented and a little on edge. Ooh, somebody's going real deep into that. I love it. Like, for those who don't know, Gaster Two Souls mentioning the fact that we see a montage of scenes where Bucky, the Winter Soldier, is having a very hard time just relating to normal people. And Bucky, despite being, not despite, but because of the fact that he was mind controlled for like 90 years, remembers every single thing he did, even though he wasn't in control. And now we don't know whether he was a passenger in his own body or whether there was something that forced him to want to kill those people and in hindsight didn't want to do it. Like, was he a robot or was he a active participant in it? I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty cool that how even on a simple, like trying to go on a simple date or seeing things, we know PTSD victims in many ways, those that are injured in that way, sounds and sights and even maybe even smells or certain types of dialogue will trigger a memory, and I love that a lot. Gaster goes on to continue to say, speaking of mental health, during the weekend I may have developed a pretty interesting one player, one DM, one shot known as the Sanitarium, and it dives into a sort of writer's interpretation of what it would be like to have Alzheimer's. That's a very interesting. That's a very interesting thing. I'm always scared of delving into mental health issues in a role playing sense, in the sense that I my motivation would be to do it justice and to treat it with respect. But I'm not sure if I would have if I'm anybody who has the skill to do it. But in a private group, you can do what you want, and the simple act of attempting it, I think should be given kudos for even doing something like that. And I love the idea of like a mental exhaustion, which, by the way, we actually have in the cinematic series, where there's mental exhaustion side by side with physical exhaustion. And I love that idea because you could even like you were mentioning, even having dialogue options where the player character is trying to say one thing but they say something else, and they're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that to that NPC, and the NPC is like, you bastard, slap across the face, walk away. Yeah. Oh yeah. um what is this? Dead man, you everywhere at the end of time. You guys are silly. Tesla Ranger says when he was with the Avengers, Sam had no use for a day job since he roamed at the Avengers compound and presumably had all his living expenses taken care of. Yep. When he applies for a loan to help out his sister, the bank employee points out that since Sam has little to no financial history to speak of, or even any recent proof of income, made even more dire by the 5 years he was technically missing after Infinity War, there's no way any financial institution would be willing to lend him money. Now, when you read comic books, especially the so-called professional superhero, usually you either have there's three ways superheroes deal with money. One is they're ultra rich. Batman, Iron Man, they're independently wealthy, right? Um, Many times, a superhero character is linked with a very booming and seemingly ironclad business. I'm looking at you, Green Lantern, or something of that nature, right? Where Blue Beetle, even they have a business. The business seems to run on its own, and they have some money. The second way that we have characters that seem to have success in living is basically room and board, right? So you have the Avengers, the X-Men, a lot of these super teams, they'll have a base of operations. And the smartest, richest person is like, I'll take care of everybody. And everyone's like, well, there's pizza being ordered, there's milk in the fridge, there's a bed, we have super vehicles to drive around in, and we've got the best in three-dimensional holographic entertainment. I'm all good, right? And it's like, yeah, but you don't really have a job. Like we don't have characters in the background in these stories going like, all right, Mr. Stark, we're going to have to sit down and like do your taxes. And Tony Stark is like, do you really think Tony Stark's going to sit down and do his own taxes? No, he's got Pepper to throw that all that bullshit on, right? Throw it on her shoulders. Let her sit down with 20 people that are trying to figure out his financials because of all the like projects he started and stopped and hid and money he's given away and all that kind of business. Yeah. Yeah. We could start taxes, the reckoning or something like that. Come up with a role playing game or whatever. Yeah. Yep. The I think the well, it is pretty hilarious, and I understand that. Yeah, sure, the Falcon was gone for 5 years, but it does beg the question: if Captain America, Steve Rogers, walked into that same bank, would he get a loan? You know, and people that have been gone for 5 years, we know financial institutions and a lot of companies would use that as an excuse because everybody, literally 50% of the population was gone for 5 years. Would any of them have any financial history? No. Now, could they pick up where they left off? Well, that's the whole point. Owen's like, how do you Americans do your taxes? Very stressfully. Yeah. Omen's like, I'd also like to bring up the Joker from Joker, who couldn't control his laughing, which led to a lot of problems. Yeah, yes, Joker from the movie Joker couldn't control his laughter, and he had certain afflictions. I suppose you could call them psychological afflictions, and those afflictions caused him to have pretty substantial impact when dealing with people in the public. Very clearly shown in one of the first images in the movie, where he's on the bus and there's a small child. He's trying to make the child laugh, and then his nervousness is making himself laugh uncontrollably, and he's trying to apologize for it, but of course people are taking it the wrong way. And the mom is just like, "Don't talk to that strange man, f you." And he's just like, "No, I don't mean anything by that." And of course, the anxiety starts to build, and he's starting to the laughter is starting to build because he's getting more uncomfortable in trying to explain himself. And pretty interesting way, if someone wanted to make a character who has low, like, so say in Dungeons and Dragons, low charisma, and it's not really they're not rude or evil. It's just that they have an uncontrollable urge, and they really can't control it. Whether it's like the things that they say, the things that they do, and it would be pretty interesting to play a character like that. It's kind of cool. Um, Let's see. Gaster Two Souls says how the entire thing would go would be this: you start a campaign off pretty generically. You're a warrior in a magic land where you have to rescue a princess. But as the campaign went on, things would become distorted. Such things as descriptions of dungeons or landscapes become more and more vague until a point where everything becomes so cobbled together, and things such as NPCs' facial features might become unrecognizable. You could even say that the unfamiliar will become familiar. Hmm. Then you may not know whether what you saw was real and what's real isn't, and such. Yeah. The game would end with the player trying to climb the castle, but as they climb up this mess of unknowable and unrecognizable hallways will morph and begin to make sense, and all that would be left of the final end would be finally meeting the princess. And as everything is about to become so clear, it cuts to black, representing as terminal lucidity, when a person who suffers from dementia suddenly becomes coherent. Ah, so that's sanitarium. Sorry for squirreling away. No, to be honest with you, I can see this show isn't going to go that deep, but in many ways, much like what was the movie, The Cell, and there's another movie, What Dreams May Come, which is more of a psychological. It's the physical representation of a psychological journey, and the things the individual has to overcome before they can find themselves. And I like the idea of that. I think that's a great idea. Now, how you would gamify that, I can see there can be some difficulty, but man, that's a great idea. That's a pretty substantially heady um, premise, and I love it though. I love it a lot, and I think this character, the character of the Winter Soldier, it's going to be pretty interesting seeing how he navigates his life, because within that first episode, you understand that he's got he's got a Green Arrow book, or he's got the Arrow book. He's got a book where he's scratching off names, because he's been taking out one by one individuals he's propped up as the Winter Soldier that are members of Hydra. He's trying to cut off the heads of the Hydra, as well as trying to make a. He's going to therapy, and he's trying to make amends. And he's befriended this older Asian gentleman with an attitude, and come to find out, like, they do a flashback where some innocent young Asian dude just happens to be there when there's assassination or murder taking place, and you know what he did. And then you find out that he's trying to make amends to this person who lost his son. Yeah. Gasper Two Souls says the therapist is kind of an asshole. Listen, with Bucky, you kind of need one. With that dude's attitude, yeah, you kind of need one. And and you also get an insight into why, you know, Bucky's going to be the Winter Soldier is going to be the straight man when it comes to all the jokes with Sam cracking, little one notes trying to like get under his skin. And now you know why the Winter Soldier's all like I'm puffing my face out and folding my arms and this is stupid. Um, yeah, a lot of that. And if we really remember from the very first Captain America, the first Avenger, Bucky was a ladies' man. Bucky, he's an attractive dude. He's got the Mark Hamill chin. He's all like beefed out and stuff. When he was the Winter Soldier, he's wearing like the super tight vest showing the pecs and everything. Yeah, attractive dude. But yeah. When he's trying to explain that he's 108 years old or whatnot to people, might want to keep that to himself. Although maybe he should be going out with people his own age. Maybe that's it. Deadman says most horror movies follow the basic concept, though it's the last little more on the last little bit of the campaign, meaning that the world you think you know is is layered with the things that are going on in your mind. And in a way, in many ways, it would be pretty interesting to have player characters have confrontations with things that are only in their minds, trying to juggle the things that are happening in reality. And though everyone else around them doesn't see it, the monsters that are affecting their minds, like, sure, you can ignore it, but it'll start deteriorating away your mind. But if you don't ignore it and you try to fight off the evil things that are chipping away at your sanity, the people around you are just seeing you having these, I don't know, periods of sanity loss and conniption fits and saying the wrong things, and you start eroding away your social status. So I suppose you could have like dueling stats of like social interaction on one side and sanity on the other, and those two things start competing with each other as you try to keep your sanity, you're losing your connections with other people, and hopefully they stick around long enough. Almost like my buddy's mom said he looks like a sexy Jesus. Hope that doesn't offend anyone. And listen, people don't want to admit it, but there's a lot of people that though they won't say it, they're religious. They like themselves some sexy Jesus. That don't get it twisted. There's we are base animals when it comes to certain things. There are many cult leaders out there, and one of their stats in being a cult leader, whether there's a true cult or whether someone makes a cult of personality around someone, part of that is good looks, or at least power and influence tends to be described as good looks, or people who look good tend to be far better at getting a cult of personality around them. So, getting back to Gasper says, I wanted to make something that brings awareness to this awful disease. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Just before that, he says, I know the idea could be cliche, but I wanted to try my own hand at the idea. I'm sorry if that's not as original as I tried to make it. Doesn't matter if it's original. Don't get caught up with that. There is no such thing as an original idea. There's too many billions of people who have lived too many lives and lifetimes to have come up with an idea that someone's like, I'm going to come up with something original. Nah, it's all about your voice and how you express that voice. So yeah, it's not a listen. I am just one of tens of thousands of people who do what I do, on the interwebs, but it's my voice versus theirs. I hope to be influential in that, but that's up to you guys. I don't make that assumption at all. Almost like, I mean, I assume that being a carpenter back in the olden days would make you kind of buff. I mean, they didn't have the power tools they have now. Hell no, right? They're like, ooh, he's got carpenter's arms. I'm gonna follow that dude. Oh yeah, oh yeah, and you get a little bit of the the what is it when guys are like a little bit of the bromance. Oh, here comes the sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Wow, it was going to have to come at some point. All right, back into the fray. So the idea. Oh, hey, hi there. Hello there. My pronies. What's going on there, pronies? What's up? That's my little shout out to using the proper pronouns. I love it. I love you guys. Whether you know it or not, I listen in on your shows during my work hours a lot of times. So thank you very much. For those out there who don't know, that there was a to promote promote the channel, please go over to Pair of Geeks and like, share, follow, subscribe. They always have great topics and such, and two's better than one. Yeah, talking about sexy Jesus. What's the actor's name that plays the Winter Soldier? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Uh, well, thank you there, Omen. I appreciate it. Yeah, got to get those glutes moving. Oh yeah, little booty shorts going on. No, anyway, the idea that a a faction, I suppose even a terrorist organization, at least from our point of view, would arrive that prefers the desolation. No. It's you guys deserve it. No, it's not awesomeness. It's facts. But the idea that there is a group of people out there, because we're talking about that first episode of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, that there is an enemy that prefers the old way, that when everyone was gone and for those 5 years when the population was decimated, that they actually prefer that part. Sebastian Stan, thank you for God, it was on the top on the the edge of my tongue. Yes, Sebastian Stan, Romanian American actor. Cool, 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 cool. Wow. Gossip Girl. Yeah, you got to start out with those small things. Yeah, Sebastian Stan. A lot of people. There's tons of memes out there putting Sebastian Stan into the role of a young Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker, and such. But that's just looks. I don't know why people worry about that kind of stuff. It is Hollywood. They use makeup and lighting and changing your voice and mannerisms and things. You don't need an actor that actually looks like that other person, but whatever. Um, but the idea that there are people around who want the old ways to return, and like I said, yeah, the heroes may, kick ass on the lich or the dragon or the wizard, the demons or whatever, devils and fiends and such that have taken over the landscape. But when they're gone, would there be people that want a return back to normalcy? At least the way things used to be? Sure, especially, most of us are self-centered, okay? And if there's people being sacrificed to some evil that lives in a mountain and none of their family had to be sacrificed, what do they care about other people? And selfishly, most of us are, there is guilt involved in it, but many of us are happy when us and those around us and our belongings and our lives are the least affected in traumatic situations. And yeah, I mean, it's guilty feeling. It's not nice, but we do it. We all do it when natural disasters happen, or here in the States, when there's, mass shootings or car accidents and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're freaking happy we're not the ones in the hospital or suffering losses or whatever. Yeah, we're happy. And yes, it does bring to us like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that way, but it's unconscious. It's a base survival skill to have to survive the next day, and a group and organization that's built around that. What a great thing to do! Like Perry Geek says, yeah, but the evil in the mountain were the good old days. We had job security. Yep, absolutely. And you knew where you were going to lay your head down. You knew that only I don't know, five unwed virgins or something would be sacrificed in the mountain, and you're like, no virgin here. Good for me. All right, let me pick up my beating stick and go ahead and beat the head and shoulders about the local virgins so we can march them up to the mountain because it's not going to be me. Right? That's a real thing. So people might want that to come back. Here's the other reason I think for people coming back, and it's very selfish, but it's true. Um, I'm going to go back to the beginning of our conversation. The crucible of survival is a bond that is very hard to break. Um, if you were in a school bus and that school bus had, I don't know, 15, 20 kids on it, and that school bus went off the side of a road and no one knew if they were going to survive, and then the authorities got there and you helped one kid because they had a broken leg, and there was another kid that was unconscious, and he tried to help them out, and three of the kids scrambled up the road to try to wait for the authorities to get there, and another kid was like just speaking, trying to keep another one awake, and the bus driver was injured there and trying to keep listen, that bond would be something that would be nearly unbroken. The crucible of survival is something that can't be broken. It's why soldiers in battle, and I'm gonna make that far more generalized. Um, if you are a school teacher and all the school teachers around you, if you are a police officer, a soldier, a firefighter, a a person working in a cubicle next to other people in a cubicle, you there's a commonality. You're like, you know what? I'm surviving here just like everybody else, trying to keep your head down so the boss doesn't fire you. You're a bus driver with other bus drivers, and everyone's cutting you off, or people are screaming and yelling in the background, and all you want to do is just clock off, and you have to do this all the next day. Me as a letter carrier in the United States Postal Service, we have a union. We're linked inexorably linked together, and despite the fact that in a normal situation I might not be friends with my other letter carriers. If you're a soldier, of course there's assholes and other people that are other soldiers that in a normal life you would never hang out with. But that crucible of survival, that greater villain, that evil, that mountain, figuratively speaking, you have to climb with other people, brings those people together. And so, yeah, the evil lich, the dragon, living in the mountainside, the wizard that has everybody mind controlled, the fiend that came from the outer realms that has taken over the world. Life was depressing, life was rough, but you know what? We all survived together. We created our own hand signal language to allow us to know when it was good to roam the streets, when the beholders or the mind flayers would roam around in the night looking for victims or something. We we shared, gray water and stale bread with each other to keep the kids alive because, you know, old man Whitaker, who was an asshole when we were kids, ran out there to be a decoy, knowing he would get killed to allow my family to live. And he's not. He might have been an asshole before, but not anymore. And so that survival, yeah, yeah. Omen says I once heard a Marine say you can't get lost without LT. Yeah. Nope, you can't. No, well, of course you can't spell it. That's the whole point, right? It's that I think it makes sense for people who think that Thanos, who snapped his fingers, isn't the hero, but created a world in which the people who lived for the last 5 years have some kind of commonality. And when you come back after those 5 years are gone, none the worse. Remember, these people didn't suffer any psychological harm. They physically aren't changed. They haven't aged. they are trying to pick up their lives as if the last 5 years don't matter. And for the people who've lived through that, and you're like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Like my life didn't matter, And it's, mind you, the people that came back, they don't know, they don't understand, and of course you're going to have those arguments where, yeah, you've been going for 5 years. No, you don't understand. You can't tell me what it feels like. You don't know what it feels like. You can't walk in my shoes. And I mean, that's a straw man, argument right there. It's like, well, no, I don't know. You're just mad I don't know, but there is no way that I would know. So an organization like that, I love that idea that there are people who believe that. Now we were talking about the other bad guys in this television show, and those bad guys are the ones that are walking around with our heroes. The post-traumatic stress, the soldier that's been in a fight that tries to come back to a normal world, and how your heroes, everybody loves the hero that beats ass of the bad guy, but when they come back to the inn and they're like covered in muck and blood and gristle, and all they can talk about is all the ass they beat, and the regular people are like, we still have to farm and pay taxes and become carpenters and stonemasons and clean up trash and go to school and teach the kids and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I'm not going to let you touch my kid. Take your hands off my kid. You've got 8 months worth of blood and gristle on your hands, under your fingernails. And so there is the idea of trying to fit back into society, and society going, yeah, your period of greatness is long gone now. You have to fit back into the war is over. You won. I believe there's a Brandon Sanderson novel that's based on that, where there were whole family lines that had to try to beat the bad guy, and the story starts out with one of the heroes literally taking his sword and running it through the bad guy and winning. And there was a whole economy built around trying to beat the bad guy and literally losing. And now that this person won, everyone's like, ooh, ugh. There were people who had influence, whose influence was built around the idea that they were recruiting people to beat the bad guy, and now they're useless. And they're like, ooh, where do we belong? If someone beats the bad guy, then we don't need to, if someone kills the dragon in the mountain and they've been sending up sacrificial individuals, and there's a whole cult built around the sacrifice of people, where do they go? Do you just get rid of that in your society and go, well, we used to do that for 600 years, but no need for that anymore, right? Those people are pretty important, that would, do the chants and get all the pomp and circumstance to march your innocent fellows up into the mountain. And what about the people who were proud to sacrifice of themselves to the mountain villain? Like, where do they fit into society? We've been feeding them, treating them with kid gloves this entire time. Now it's like, I'm not working to keep them alive, like just to be sacrificed. Like, that's they're on welfare, they're on the dole. But so yeah, it can get pretty shall we say, a little bit, we could get a little bit political, I suppose, would be the thing. Now, since we're getting to the end of the show here, I just want to bring up one last thing before we leave out of here. For those who do not know, as I've mentioned before, I am a contributing writer and content creator, and my little tiny bit has been part of a current operation. Matter of fact, let me change some of these images around here. There is a project that I have been working on, known as Level Up 5th Edition. And Level Up 5th Edition is a project created by and sponsored by N-World, and I just happen to be someone brought in. Man, let's switch this around here. Please go over to the website Level Up 5E. So levelup5e.com. Go over there. Take a look at this pretty daunting, and probably going to be one of the largest, if not a little bit controversial, Kickstarters to come up here in the late spring, midsummer of 2021, depending on how well it's going. If you go over to levelup5e.com, all one word, levelup5e, you'll see all the playtest materials, the surveys given out for what people want, some artwork, and as a matter of fact, if you go over to Level Up, you'll see the community and the team that's there. The team is pretty daunting. I mean, it's huge, and of course, Russ Morrissey is there. And if you go over join our Discord server, you'll see the link. You can go right over to the link there. And if I remember to do so, I'll even put it down in the doobly-doo. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of that, and letting me self-promote a little bit. I was brought in with a bunch of other brilliant people. I felt like an imposter, to be honest with you, and still do, that were brought in to make the exploration pillar, which is nearly as big, if maybe might even grow bigger than the combat section. So it's pretty cool. So I'm really loving it. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for letting me rant about that. And please, everybody, have a great one out there. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye. And maybe get over some allergy medicine or something like that, because I really do feel it. So, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Have a great one.